Good evening. Tonight, we begin in a world with no alphabet, no books, no texting, and thankfully, no group chats asking you awake at 3 in the morning. Long before people wrote stories, laws, or shopping lists, humans were already making symbols. Tiny marks, lines scratched into bone, shapes painted onto cave walls, handprints pressed into stone like someone saying, very softly, "I was here." And honestly, that may be one of the oldest feelings in human history. The need to leave something behind. The need to be remembered. So tonight, we travel far back into the deep past. Back before kings and castles. Before paper. Before cities. Before anyone had the terrible idea of inventing taxes. We begin with symbols. Not words. Not language as we know it. Just mysterious signs left by people who lived so long ago that even their names are gone. And somehow, some of those symbols are still staring back at us. Quietly waiting. Now, if you walked into a cave around 30,000 years ago, the first thing you would notice is the darkness. Not cozy darkness. Not movie night darkness. Real darkness. The kind that completely swallows the world. Early humans entered these caves carrying small fire torches. The flames danced across wet stone walls while smoke drifted upward into the blackness above. And there, hidden deep inside the caves, they painted animals, hunters, strange dots, zigzags, handprints, sometimes hundreds of them. Today, archaeologists still debate what many of these symbols actually meant. Were they stories? Religious signs? Warnings? Ancient hunting maps? Or maybe one prehistoric artist simply wanted to draw a bison because, honestly, the bison looked cool. We really do not know. And that mystery is part of what makes these places feel so haunting. Because the people who made the symbols are gone. But the symbols stayed. One cave in France contains paintings so beautiful that when modern people first discovered them, some experts refused to believe ancient humans could have created them. They thought the paintings were fake. Imagine insulting a prehistoric artist from 20,000 years ago. Meanwhile, the artist is somewhere in history saying, "Bro, I worked really hard on that horse." But eventually scientists realized the paintings were real. Very real. The ancient world suddenly felt much smarter and much stranger. Because these were not random doodles. The paintings showed skill, planning, movement, meaning. Which raises a huge question. Why do humans create symbols at all? Well, symbols are powerful because they let us store ideas outside the brain. A symbol can carry memory, emotion. A simple mark can survive long after the person who made it disappears. And humans figured this out very early. In fact, some of the oldest carved objects ever found are pieces of bone with repeated markings cut into them. Tiny lines scratched carefully over and over again. Some researchers think they may have counted days or moon cycles. Others think they had ritual meaning. And some may have been personal symbols connected to identity. Like an ancient signature. A tiny message saying, "This belongs to me." Or maybe, "I exist." That idea feels surprisingly emotional. Because even today, humans still do the exact same thing. We carve initials into trees. We write names into wet cement. We leave sticky notes on refrigerators. We post photos online hoping somebody remembers us for at least 5 minutes before scrolling away to look at a raccoon stealing cat food. Human behavior really has not changed that much. Only the technology changed. The deeper needs stayed the same. And symbols became more and more important as human societies grew. Over time, certain marks began carrying shared meanings. A circle. A cross, a spiral, a hand, repeated again and again across different places and different cultures. Some symbols appeared in regions separated by oceans and thousands of years, which is honestly a little creepy, because it suggests humans may naturally create similar symbolic patterns no matter where they live. Almost like certain shapes live deep inside the human mind itself. Spirals are a good example. Ancient spirals appear carved into stones in Ireland, painted onto pottery in Greece, and scratched into rock walls in deserts far away from both. Why spirals? Nobody fully knows. Maybe they represented the sun. or life, or dreams. Or maybe humans just looked at snails and thought, now that is good design. Then mystery. And mystery is everywhere in the ancient world. Because symbols are tricky things. You can understand a picture without knowing a language. But symbols are different. They depend on shared meaning. If the culture disappears, the symbol may become unreadable forever. Imagine somebody from the future finding a modern stop sign thousands of years from now. Without context, it might seem deeply mysterious. Maybe they would think it was religious. A sacred red octagon worshipped by the car people. Archaeologists of the future would probably write entire books about it. And honestly, they would still be less confused than we are about some ancient symbols. That is the strange thing about history. Sometimes the oldest messages survive, but the meaning dies. And this happened many times. Entire civilizations vanished while leaving symbols behind like locked doors without keys. Silent messages. Frozen thoughts. Beautiful puzzles nobody can solve. Some ancient scripts remain undeciphered even today. Experts stare at them for decades trying to unlock their secrets. Computers analyze patterns. Linguists compare symbols. Archaeologists search ruins for clues. And still, silence. The symbols refuse to explain themselves. In a strange way that makes them feel alive. Still guarding something. Still holding on to the voices of lost worlds. And maybe that is why people become so obsessed with undeciphered symbols. Because every unreadable mark reminds us that history is incomplete. There are entire human stories we can no longer hear. Entire lives reduced to scratches in stone. And yet, there is something peaceful about that too. Tonight, somewhere beneath deserts, forests, mountains, and oceans, forgotten symbols still sleep in darkness. Waiting patiently. Waiting for someone to notice them again. And maybe, waiting for someone who can finally understand what they were trying to say. If there is one book in the world that seems almost designed to annoy historians, it is the Voynich Manuscript. A book so strange that experts have spent more than 100 years trying to read it, and have learned almost nothing. Which is honestly impressive. Usually, humans can decode things eventually. Ancient languages. Lost alphabets. Terrible handwriting from medieval monks who apparently wrote with their elbows. But the Voynich Manuscript is different. It just sits there quietly like a smug little mystery. Unreadable. Unbothered. Probably enjoying the attention. The story begins in the early 1900s when a rare book dealer named Wilfrid Voynich discovered the manuscript in Italy. At first glance, it looked like a normal old medieval book. Old pages. Faded ink. Beautiful drawings. Nothing too dramatic. But then people opened it, and immediately realized something was very wrong. The text inside was written in a language nobody recognized. Not Latin. Not Greek. Not Arabic. Not anything. The letters looked almost familiar, but not quite. Like a language from a dream. Some symbols repeated often. Others appeared rarely. Words flowed across the pages in neat lines, suggesting real structure and grammar. This was not random scribbling. It looked organized, intentional, carefully planned. And then came the illustrations. Oh yes, the illustrations made everything even stranger. The book contains drawings of plants that do not appear to exist anywhere on Earth. Roots twist into impossible shapes. Flowers bloom in bizarre combinations. Leaves belong to no known species. It is like someone tried describing plants after seeing them once during a fever dream. Then there are the astronomy pages. Circular diagrams filled with stars and strange symbols. Mysterious zodiac images. Tiny naked figures floating through green tubes and pools. At one point, the book honestly begins looking less like medieval science and more like somebody accidentally dropped soup onto a wizard textbook. And yet, it feels meaningful. That is the frustrating part. Nothing about the manuscript feels random. The pages suggest knowledge, purpose, system, almost like the author fully expected someone to read it someday. Just apparently not us. Now naturally, historians became obsessed. And over the years, many theories appeared. Some believed the manuscript was a coded scientific text. Others thought it was an alchemy guide. Some suggested it contained secret medical knowledge. A few people even claimed it was written by aliens, which feels like humanity's favorite emergency explanation whenever things get confusing. Cannot explain the pyramids? Aliens. Weird lights in sky? Aliens. Unreadable medieval vegetable book? Definitely aliens. To be fair though, the manuscript really is strange enough to inspire wild ideas. Especially because even professional codebreakers failed to crack it. During World War II, expert cryptographers examined the manuscript. These were people trained to break enemy codes. People who solved military ciphers during wartime. And even they struggled. The text behaved like real language in some ways. Certain words appeared in predictable places. Patterns repeated naturally. But no translation system worked. Nothing unlocked the meaning. Imagine spending years studying a book only for the book to basically shrug at you. Researchers eventually used computers to analyze the writing. And the results became even more mysterious. The text follows statistical patterns similar to actual human languages. That is important, because fake gibberish usually looks chaotic. But the Voynich text has rhythm, structure, consistency, almost like the unknown language obeys hidden rules. Which raises an uncomfortable possibility. What if it really is a genuine language, but from a culture or system we no longer understand? That thought feels strangely lonely. Somewhere in history, perhaps somebody could once open this book and read every page easily. Maybe a scholar, a doctor. Maybe the text once made perfect sense to an entire group of people. And now their voices are completely locked away. Silent behind symbols no one can open. The manuscript itself was likely created in the early 1400s. Scientists confirmed this through carbon dating. So at least we know the book is genuinely old. Not some modern prank. Which honestly would have been one of the most committed practical jokes in human history. Imagine spending years creating hundreds of pages of fake language just to confuse people centuries later. That is dedication. Still, some researchers do believe it could be an elaborate hoax, perhaps created to fool wealthy collectors. Medieval Europe loved mysterious objects, especially if they sounded magical or forbidden. People have always been surprisingly willing to pay extra for anything described as secret ancient wisdom. Even today, some things never change. But many experts doubt the hoax theory because the manuscript is simply too detailed, too consistent, too carefully organized. Every page follows internal patterns. The writing flows naturally. The symbols behave like they belong to a functioning system. And perhaps most fascinating of all, no corrections appear in the text. Very few scratches. Very few edits. The author wrote smoothly and confidently, as if they completely understood the language they were using. That detail keeps researchers awake at night, because it suggests the manuscript may not be nonsense at all. Somebody knew exactly what they were writing. We just cannot follow them anymore. And maybe we never will. There is something oddly peaceful about imagining the manuscript resting quietly through the centuries. Hidden in libraries. Surviving wars. Passing through the hands of collectors and scholars. Its pages whispering secrets nobody can hear. Candles flickering beside it in medieval rooms. Rain tapping against monastery windows. Dust gathering slowly across its strange illustrations. Waiting. Always waiting. And perhaps the most haunting part is this. The manuscript reminds us that knowledge can vanish. Not just objects. Not just buildings. Entire systems of meaning can disappear from the earth. A civilization may leave behind books, symbols, maps, and art. But if nobody remembers how to read them, silence takes over. The message survives, but the voice is gone. Tonight, the Voynich Manuscript still exists, locked safely away, covered in its impossible writing, its strange plants, its unreadable stars. And somewhere inside that silent book, there may still be a human thought that nobody has heard for 600 years.